about to get started, so I would just ask to have a seat. We have SAU in the house, right? SAU brothers? All right, welcome. That's good to have you. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the beautiful Anna Nye Alumni Center. It's good to see everyone, even despite this cold weather. I am so pleased that we could join for this New Beach tradition in the Fireside Chat. My name is Dan Montoya. I'm the Vice President for University Relations and Development here at CSULB, and I've been here about 4 months, so I'm so happy to be here. But what I have noticed in my 4 months is all the pride for this institution and for the community of Long Beach, so it's just amazing to be here. I spent a majority of my time at San Diego State, and then I most recently before I came here, was at LMU. So I'm just happy to be at the beach and happy to work for an amazing team, and then also work for an amazing president, which is going to join us here in a little bit. Jean is on video, and I'm going to introduce her now. She's an amazing president, has done so much for this institution, and so she's our very own leader and has done some amazing things for us, and she's zooming in with us here. So I'm going to welcome our president, Jean Conley.
Well, thank you very much, Dan, and welcome to everyone who's here. As you can see, I'm traveling. I'm in a hotel room. I have a hotspot, so hope everything will work well. But I'm sorry I couldn't join you for this very special fireside chat. And although I'm disappointed, I know that between Dan Montoya and our dedicated alumni relations and events teams and the always inspiring and engaging Skip Keesal, our guests are in very good hands tonight. And as I saw people walking around, and I wish I was with you there, Dan Gooch and Marilyn Bowl and Arlene Walter and George Medak and Coach Alan Knipe and James Amata and Colleen Bentley and Trish Farber and many others. So thank you all for coming out, especially in what I understand is some unusually cold and windy weather lately, something rare in Southern California. I read from beautiful Big Island of Hawaii that there was a blizzard warning a few days ago. So those are not ideal commuting conditions for sure, and makes it even more special that you came out. But you know, there's nothing like a sparkling conversation with good friends in a welcoming environment for both body and soul, and you're in front of a fireplace. So thanks for coming out and tuning in tonight, those who are on the webinar. I'd also like to thank Dan Montoya for serving as our moderator. And of course, I want to extend very special thanks to our featured speaker, Skip Keesal, who may not remember this, but he was one of the first people, one of the first alums that I met after arriving at the beach. And he brought me to lunch at Spaghettini's. That was my first experience of Spaghettini's. And I think George was with us. So I look forward to the conversation to come and for seeing you at the next Fireside Chat, if not before. So have a great evening, everyone. And of course, go beach. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Jane. Let's give her a round of applause. I mean, she's and an aloha to you, Jane. So great. So thank you, Jane, for your kind words. And again, you know, the man of the hour was one of the persons that was recommended to me to speak to when I first came to Long Beach, and so it's so great to finally have some time with him and get to learn from him. Many of you have probably known him for a long time, so I hope that you're going to get to hear some things that you don't already know. So that would be a good thing. So before we get started, I want to again welcome everybody online, and I also want to share with you a real quick executive summary of a background of Skip Keesal, so we kind of, for those of you who don't know him, know a little bit about him. So Samuel Skip Keesal Jr. was born in Chicago, Illinois, and was raised on a ranch in Tucson, Arizona. He served in the U.S. Army before graduating from CSULB with a Bachelor of Science in 1962 in business, and went on to USC Law School. Skip founded the law firm of Keesal Jr. in Logan in 1970, which now has offices in Long Beach, San Francisco, Seattle, Anchorage, and Hong Kong. a member of the International Academy of Trial Lawyers since 1990, and the American Board of Trial Advocates since 1990, Skip has tried over 250 cases in 17 different states, and I think he added a couple more this week, right? And then also including approximately 75 jury trials. Through his prolific career, Skip has been awarded many distinctions and accolades, including being named Lawyer of the Year in Best Lawyers of America in 2012, 2014, 2019, 2020. He's also a CSULB Distinguished Alumni for the College of Business in 1991. Skip has dedicated himself to the local and national community by supporting numerous charitable and civic projects, having served on numerous boards of charitable organizations, including our own 49er Foundation. So that's like a snapshot, but I'm sure there's a lot more. So that's where we're going to spend our time talking to Skip and learning a little bit more. So we're going to just go through a real quick interview session kind of, and then once we're done with that, we'll open up to questions. We'll open up to questions here and online. So please, as we're talking, think of the questions that you may want to ask Skip. So thank you, Skip, for joining us. We're so happy to have you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. I'm flattered to be here and see so many of my friends. Obviously, my wonderful wife, Beth. Some of my dearest friends are here. And if you knew how much it cost for me to pay them to come here. And Jane, thank you for your nice comments. As usual, the most charming person in the room. So happy to respond to any inquiry you might have.
All right. So let's start with your life on the ranch. Talk to us a little bit about that and how it kind of shaped who you are today.
Well, thank you for that. That's a part of my life that I really love to talk about. Our family lived in Chicago till I was 10 and 11. We went down to a dude ranch, which also had a rodeo capacity, and the head cowboy there who took people like us out on rides was a professional rodeo cowboy association guy, rode saddle broncs and bulldogged and all that. And there was a huge herd, 26, 28 head of cows, including 4 Brahma bulls, a Brahma cow, and so on, that people would run in to eat the alfalfa on this ranch, and then instead of just running them back out into the scrub brush, this cowboy, Kenny Williams was his name, would bring them in, and so we'd ride them. And you say, well, God, a 10, 11-year-old kid riding a Brahma bull? You know, I look back at it, wasn't probably my smartest move. But Brahma bulls in India, they sit in the middle of the street, and they're just the calmest thing. If you don't strap them up in the wrong places, they're really easy to get along with. So got started doing that, and then rodeoed till I was about 19, I guess, and did rodeos almost every weekend, like 40 a year. And I did all the stuff, the riding wild horses and team roping and calf roping and so on and so forth. I just loved it. And after we got out here and got settled, we got a series of horses, one of which was named Dillon, James Arness's horse. He raised him, Marshall Dillon, from Gunsmoke, and he was absolutely the neatest horse. Cowboys will call a horse a push-button horse because all you got to do is, get on him, and then if it worked right, you did it all in 7 seconds, and he would be responsible for the credit. So I loved doing that, and I think answering your question, Dan, there were a lot of things that you had to do in Tucson. We had a 109-acre ranch, not the biggest you've ever seen, but had a flat area, and so I actually built a roping arena. And if you know the story about the little red hen who couldn't get anybody to help make the bread, and they'd all help eat it. Well, I had the same thing, and I worked for I don't know, 3 months digging holes and putting railroad ties from the dump in it. And then I had 1 steer and 1 calf, and I would rope them 4 or 5 times each basically every day that I was there. One time I was on my brother's horse. We called him Red. It's the biggest horse you've ever seen. And I had roped the calf enough so that I didn't feel comfortable, wearing it out anymore. So I roped the steer with the idea of calf roping it, which means you wait till it jumps up, you pull its leg, it hopefully falls down and gets the wind knocked out of it so you can then tie him up. But this is a much bigger animal, the steer is. So I had this big string in my mouth that I was supposed to tie him up with, and all of a sudden things went horribly wrong. He jumped as he was supposed to. I took his leg and did this, and the horn, he had these little bitty horns went through here, and I just had teeth sticking out the front. So you ask about, what did that do to your life? Well, the answer is when you're out there, half a mile, quarter of a mile from any place, and your teeth are sticking out, you put your hands up like this, and you push them back in, and you get on that horse. The one thing they always say, don't run a horse in the desert because there are holes and wire and all this stuff. What the hell with that? So they plastered them up, and because it was such a brute force thing, it broke the bone rather than the teeth, so I only lost one tooth. But at some point in time, you realize that a lot of what happens in your life depends on you and how you deal with it. That would probably not be the best example of it, but that's kind of the way I've thought about things and tried to make sure that I've thought about things in a way to get them done the best way I could, but always having confidence that it would always work out.
That's a great story, and I'm just curious. Are you a Yellowstone fan?
No.
Okay.
Well, I ride horses, and they look like real cowboys, but
yes, they do. So, as a veteran,
you're a rancher too.
Yes, I used to we used to break Appaloosas.
Oh, really?
Oh,
wow.
So I fell off quite a bit of times, and I learned that you just got to keep getting back on until it's done.
Absolutely.
So as a veteran, I want to thank you for your service, and I think it's really commendable. But also the military experience that you went through. I'd like for you to talk a little bit about that and how that also shaped your life in kind of preparing you as you were being a young man and continuing to grow. And you weren't even graduated from Long Beach yet, but how did that shape you as you were continuing to develop as a young man?
Well, thank you for asking that. I actually joined when I was in high school. Basketball coach was a part of a reserve unit there, and you could go in the Army for 6 months. In my case, it would be a tank unit, so I went to basic training like 6 days after I graduated from law school, had my 18th birthday in boot camp, and then was in the Army for the remainder of 6 months and had 3 tank training programs, and then ultimately was in charge of a platoon of tanks in the reserves over a 5.5 year period. So nothing exciting about that, but you kind of learn that if you're at the bottom, you really know where you are, and sometimes that's not the best event of your life. But if you keep your nose down and try and do things right, it normally works out, and it did for me. And I think I learned what it was to be eminently humble, and then to deal with things as things got better and I got more stripes on my sleeve. So it's from rags to riches, or some would say the other way around if you didn't like your sergeant in boot camp.
Yeah, I just remember in the military there was a lot of one-way conversations. you don't answer back, so that's good.
When we were in Fort Knox, I was in charge of a tank. I was a tank commander, and I had 3 guys, and one of them was a guy named Smart. And Smart was from the South, and his teeth were gnawed out at the side, and I think he would be the first one to say he's probably, well, in any event, he was the last guy in line on our tank. So I would have to ask him to do things like change the oil or get some different caliber shells for the big gun and that kind of stuff. And he used to say, I'll do her, but I don't want to.
That's so good. So now, talk to us about what brought you to the beach here at CSULB, and talk to us about your example as a student.
Well, thank you. Thank you. When I got out of the Army, I went back to the University. I went to the University of Arizona, which is where I always meant to go. But I wanted to go in the same fraternity that most of my friends from high school were. And I got dinged. I didn't. Somebody didn't want me in, so I didn't get in. And so I just sweated out there and finished college and move on to other things. But my aunt lived in Compton, and she said, "Why don't you come over and go to Cal State Long Beach?" So I did. The first couple of years, you wouldn't want to brag on my grades, but at some point, the 3 or 4 of my best friends and I said, if we're going to do something with our lives, we better get going. So we did, and so the last couple of years it went all right. And ultimately, to my surprise, and I think to everybody's surprise, I got into SC. I'll just go on with this story because I love to tell this. You're going to ask me about all right. So we went to law school at a time when the paper chase was how it worked, and literally, first of all, there's a big auditorium at SC called Boulevard Auditorium, and there were 239 of us who went to law school that year. And the contracts professor said, literally, look to your left, look to your right, those people won't be there. Well, I mean, wasn't what I expected, but there I was. And so the first year you've got 2 6-unit classes, and if you don't do well in those, you're probably not going to make the cut. And if, on the other hand, you work hard, you can. Those 2 classes will basically set you on easy street. So I went to the classes and studied as hard as I could. Went to the classes, and then at night I would go to them again without ever talking with either professor, the twice professor and the contracts professor. And I always wore a blue button-down collar shirt. And during the day, I'd stand up when they called on me and do the things that you had to do. And at night, I'd sit in the back. And you say, well, why would you do that? Well, 2 things. One is, if you want to get a good grade on an exam, taking the class twice, particularly in the same day, I thought would make you a little bit smarter, a little bit more qualified to ultimately do good on that and graduate. And the second was that somebody would say, these 2 professors, the kid in the back, he's trying. So I've kind of adopted the I can't outthink him, but I can outwork him approach to things. And it's most of the time that turned out to be the case.
That's great. So now talk to us about your firm and how you started your firm and how you began to build it and into the reputable firm that it is today.
Well, I'm very proud of where we are, but I credit everybody in the firm. I think we have 108 families, and these are people that the average staff member's been there 20 years. The 7 most senior people in the firm have been together for 50 years. I was with a firm, and they didn't make somebody a partner after promising them, telling them that they would. You know, the guy goes home, tells his wife and family, and then they say, no, they're extending it by a year. And when I asked why that was, and they said for financial reasons. Well, don't do that. That's not right. And I love the place. They're absolutely dynamite people, but you can't, I don't think you can hitch your wagon to a star in which you have no confidence. And here's something that no one thought through. I mean, the guy was eminently qualified. They made an extra $6,500 or $65,000 on him by not making him a partner, but it wasn't right. And they should have known what the reaction would be of I don't know that I was any great shakes, but me and other people. And then well, I'll just say this, we had some medical problems in the family when I was in here at the beach and at the law school. And so we were just hopelessly in debt. I mean, you just couldn't imagine it. We're uninsured. Back then it had to do with, it doesn't matter what it had to do with, but it wasn't insured. So the question was, how are you ever going to get yourself out of this jam? Because I owed $64,000. I was making $9,500 a year. You know, I mean, you can't make that math work, can you, Mike? The man who built the couple that built the pyramid here, they know how to count, and so did I. It didn't look like it was going to work out, but I left that firm and it didn't take any business. I didn't think that was the right thing to do. Still don't, and I didn't. I tried not to tell them what was going on. They took me to the California Club and gave me a couple of glasses of wine, and I loosened up and told them, and they ultimately made the guy a partner. But I went to this other firm, a trial specialty firm, and all we did was try jury cases. I think I tried 11 jury cases in 12 months, and they were lawyers' cases, which meant other lawyers didn't feel comfortable trying the case, maybe didn't have much experience or maybe whatever. So I just love that. So I'm sitting in the office of one of the named partners, and this was a I don't know what to say, a kick-ass firm. And I don't mean beat up people, but I mean, if you wanted the best trial lawyers anywhere, there may be others that were as good, but there were none that were better. Take me out of the equation. But it was really great stuff, and I loved doing it. I'm sitting in one of the named partners' offices, and he had just tried a case. And this is unbelievable, but Beth and I were talking about this the other day. This is like 50 years ago. And somebody had mentioned, we're going to have dinner with the president of computer sciences, former president. He had like 11,000 employees. We didn't even know who he was. We met him at the country club, and they were nice. So we're going to do that soon. So in looking him up, I said, God, I think Fletcher Jones started that. Well, Fletcher Jones, not the car guy, but Fletcher Jones did start that. Fletcher Jones flew an airplane into Santa Barbara and landed too far down the runway, went off the end and broke the landing gear. So this guy, Sam, who's now passed away, tried the case for him and won it. The judge did put in his opinion that he thought that the reason that he went off the end of the runway, swear to God, was because he had his hand on the knee of his girlfriend who was on the airplane that he was flying. Okay. All right. Well, with that background, ladies and gentlemen, so his assistant came in and said that she had forgotten to file a cost bill. Cost bill is you get something for how much the complaint fee was when you filed it with the court, so on and so forth. And he said, how much is this? And she said, 160. It's either $160.50 or $165. And he went, they'll never know. Meaning the client wouldn't know they were entitled to that money. And I thought, BS, this is not my place. So I got no money, I got no clients because I didn't take clients from either place. I had one brokerage house, because that was a client that came into me and nobody else knew anything about it. So, but zero clients. So walk out the door, you're good on principle, Keesal, but you're not too smart with the math because, I'd gotten $27,500, a triple increase in that 2 or 3 days to get that next job. It was, if I was ever going to make it, that was going to work, except I'm not going to be dealing with people who are not straightforward. So to answer your question, Dan, I went down. I was 4.5 years, really, 3.5 years, really 4, because I graduated midterm and I worked on a master's. But I used to play volleyball down here. George and Jim and some of the guys here did that with me. And so you just hurry home from class and then you play volleyball. So I thought, well, I'm going to go down to Long Beach. I'm going to rent an apartment in the Long Beach Tower, Ocean Tower, that round building, and we'll put my secretary, I had this really loyal, wonderful secretary, we'll put her there in the kind of dining room, and I'll go in the bedroom. And when we had a client, if in fact we ever had one, it would be, I'd be there, and if I didn't, I'd be in the bedroom with that person. And if we didn't get any business, I would take the elevator to the sub-basement. You can do this today, and go under what's now Seaside Way, past the Villa Riviera, and there are volleyball courts up there. There's still maybe a dozen of them right now. Well, the good news was I never had to do that. And we broke even in about 11 months. And the first thing I did, I'd never been to Europe at that point, and the first thing I did was send Mona, my secretary, to Europe for 2 weeks. She was the key to the kingdom, Dan.
That's great to hear. So, with that said, you've been part of so many different trials and cases. So, what are some of the most memorable or formative, and why?
We represented the 2 widows whose husbands were police officers from Palos Verdes Estates who were shot dead at the Holiday Inn in Torrance. That's not the kind of thing we normally do, but I got a call 3 weeks before the 1-year statute of limitations on their death would have run, by a woman whose son played high school. He was our running back, probably the only good player on the Mirror Est High School team, and he was so I knew him, and our son Stephen was the captain of the football team. And again, there's been no generation of athletics in the Keesal family in 20 generations, but he's a great leader, and for those who know him, he's a big strapping guy, and so he looks like he's a good. Okay, so we checked into this, and the idea is if 2 people get shot, these happen to be, as I say, police officers in a public place, if you can show that there's been negligence or gross negligence on the part of the landowner, then you can recover. But that's Holiday Inn. I mean, you just assume they're going to take care of things, and they absolutely lied. It was just incredible. If we had a half an hour, this story probably, my stories sometimes run on endlessly, as you'll see if you have seen, but it was not pretty. So the attorney on the other side had lied to me about there not being any crimes on the property. There had been 300 crimes on the property, 149 Part 1 felonies, including 11, maybe it was 13, armed robberies. So, first of all, don't ever lie to a jury. Don't ever lie to anybody. But you just say, what? All right. So when I pick a jury, best see me do this. I say, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. I've heard people say, are you leaning this way or are you leaning that way? I said, if you say that you can't vote for the other side or you can't vote for us for whatever reason, you just have to say, I can't do it, and the judge will assign you to another courtroom. But frankly, I think, if you don't have that difficulty and you're just leaning one way or another, I think Steve Young and I think it's our responsibility to demonstrate we're entitled to your verdict. And so I hope you'll stay. I think it's an interesting case, sad case, but an interesting case, and I hope you stay. That's it for 3.5 days. And this attorney on the other side, you wouldn't have liked him. He was, let's just use the nicest word, he was supercilious. He was just not a nice guy. And so when that happens, I think we're making money finding money on the street, because, you know, people want to vote for the people they think are being straightforward and they think are nice. All right, so I sit there. We finally, after 3.5 days, get 12 people sworn in. And then they put another 6 in front of the jury box so that we can get 2 alternates in case somebody gets sick on the regular jury. And as they're going to their seats, the judge says, now, do any of you have any reason why you cannot be fair and impartial jurors? And this woman who's already been sworn in, I mean, she hadn't got anything to say. Nobody asked her a question. She stands up and she points at this guy and she says, I don't believe him. The more he talks, the less I believe him. And by the time this case is over, I don't think I'll believe a word he says. Except you feel like saying, well, ma'am, if you had just said that a little less adamantly, we might have avoided the mistrial and having to go through choosing into. Okay. So anyway, we ended up getting to settle the case while the jury was out for $5 million and got 2 very nice people their huge share of that. And it was an eye-opener in a lot of respects. But if you remember the expression from one of the Shakespeare plays, right will out, I believe that if you're a lawyer, if you're a businessman, if you're in any capacity, if you just play it straight up the middle, answer the question, not only honestly, but answer the question that the other person would have asked if they had known what to ask. And then you got nothing to worry about. You just absolutely have nothing to worry about. And if you're looking for some return on that kind of thing, they respect that. People like that. People, I mean, everybody, I think, is entitled to that. One of my favorite expressions is, leave a buck in it for the other guy. You know, we're all doing just fine. Everybody got here with a half a tank of gas, and we're doing great. And, you know, in this country, thank goodness, most people are now getting to a point where they can be fed, they can have retirement, they can have medical care. But you don't need the extra dollar. I just say this one more thing, because this is, I mean, the suggestion was that, you know, I've had a good run here, the firm's had a good run. I blame the firm's good success on everybody else. But one thing I like to say is, when I'm in an airport, to illustrate the kind of my approach to things, which I think has been helpful in the good fortune that we've had. When I'm in the bathroom, there's almost always a guy who's in there cleaning up. And you say, well, what's the point of this, Skip? Well, you know, that person maybe couldn't get another job. Maybe they really liked that job. Maybe they needed the money. Maybe the thinking process is not good for them getting a better job. So I always give them a $5 bill or a $10 bill, and I say, thanks for making this so nice. I swear I've done this 50 times, more. And they always smile. And so what happens with that? The person who gets that, it's got $5 or $10. That's good. That buys a beer, a glass of wine. Great. But it also lets him think that somebody appreciated what he did that day, in a job where appreciation is probably in short supply for that kind of a job. And so he squares his shoulders and he goes home and tells his wife or significant other that that happened to him, and he has that proud moment, and maybe he does buy a beer with that $5, and he says, you know, this is it's a good day for me today. So that's kind of been the collective approach of the firm or community activity that you speak of. We try and leave a bucket for the other guy, make it better for him, but always think of what the other person, what the other person is, you believe, is thinking, and let them be proud of the fact that they've had a discussion with you. It's not higher math. And I mean, for those who know me, it's a lot of lawyers come in and pound the table and that kind of stuff. Well, that is not acceptable at Keesal, Young, and Logan, I'll tell you that. But Beth's twin sister, when she was alive, she used to say, when Skip gets upset, he makes a fist in his pocket. And that's right. There's nothing here that justifies, slamming your fist through a plasterboard wall as we see in the movies, and so on and so forth. And I think it's kind of a conglomeration of all the things that you were kind enough to ask me about, Dan, that has me looking that way.
Yeah, and again, I think that's a great lesson for us to all, a good reminder for us to all think about. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to open it up to everybody, either online or here in the room. But I think this is kind of fitting because we do have a lot of students who are here online. And so what advice would you give a current Long Beach student who's thinking of following similar steps like you? And is there something you wish someone would have told you when you were a student?
I don't know the answer to the last part of that because I just don't know, but I can tell you what I would say to all of them. There's some basics in life. You just be the most honest person there. You be the nicest person there. Not sugar sweet, not BSing, but just be a nice person. And you'll find out that'll make you feel better. That'll make them feel better. And if you're trying to impress the professor by sitting in the back of the room, it's probably better if you have a smile on your face and so on. Secondly, I have the expression that I've mentioned before, I can't outthink them, but I can outwork them. And if you're the first person up, if you're in an apartment or a fraternity house or the library here, you get there first and you leave last, because then you've done everything that you can. And and you're going to do better, and people are going to recognize that by your grades and so on. But also, you're going to feel better. And all of a sudden, you've got your shoulders back, and you're walking forward, and you get another job. And if you're my lucky guy, you get into SC Law School, and then you get out and you run through this scenario that we're talking about. It was just me and the secretary, and then Steve Young and Bob Logan were both law clerks. They were still in law school. I needed somebody who really was smart. So they came on down, and 52 years later, they're the top 7 people been there, as I said, 50 plus years, and they're still there.
That's great. Thank you for your thoughts, and it's so great to see the whole trajectory of your career and how successful you've been. So I think now we're going to open it up for questions. So I'm gonna pass the mic to Jeannie.
Thank you, awesome. And just for the speakers in the room, you just hold it a little bit further from your mouth. Help the folks on here.
Hi. It's really nice meeting you face to face.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Privilege to attend several dozen, maybe it seems like that many.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Events at the 14th and 14th floor in your offices.
Oh, good. Oh,
in support
great.
in support of our Democratic candidates. And
oh, good for you. Great.
I'm president of a Democratic club, and we supported 14 races this last time and lost only one. Anyway,
good.
So the question I have for you is, obviously you care about the city, you care about this university. I'm concerned about how we move forward. We're moving in a very progressive direction. However, we have competing interests and competing concerns. Business entities want to support. The police department wants to control the city hall. But you haven't noticed that this is what's going on. And it's not good, not healthy. But it's part of what we have. The majority of the city budget goes to law enforcement. So I was on the Board of Health too, so I have a certain bias in that area. We only get 1% for health. Anyway, how do we balance those competing interests? How do we recognize the role of this university and the City College, our educational pillars, if you will, of this community, and how to integrate to the best advantage for its students within the community? And how do we move forward into the future where our port, which is a driving part of our economy, is going to be 20 feet underwater? And not right away, but it's going to happen. Do we take the route of Amsterdam and New Orleans and build seawalls and pumps? I mean, if we're going to do that, we better start now, because it costs a lot of money. Anyway, so those kinds of things. What are we going to do about our future? And the other thing is we've been reliant on oil revenue for, what, a century at least, or more or less. And that's going to go away. So how are we going to supplant that with replacement revenue? And how do we build our infrastructure with new employers like Silicon Beach? Those things are very important and maybe a wave of the future. Thank you.
You bet. A lot to be reflected on in those comments, and many of which I think you point out very important things that do need work on. We've had the privilege over the years to work with President Clinton. We're in the Clinton Global Initiative and the Clinton Foundation, and he is, whether you're Republican or Democrat, there's nobody who is more concerned about and more focused on taking care of the kind of problems that you're discussing, probably every one of those. And what he would say is, this is ironic because I had a little white bag that I was carrying around. We had dinner with the president maybe 3 weeks ago, a month ago, and he gave me these 4 pins, which had pathetic things about we all like. We all got to get along together, and this isn't them and us. It isn't them and us. It's us, or something like that. Meaning we all got to stick with this together. And if I could just go on with this for just another 30 seconds. At one dinner, there were 10 people at this dinner. This is 15 years ago with Eric Larson. And, you're the only person at the table, me, that you never heard of. And one of the guys was the guy who was, I shouldn't say that, one of the gentlemen was the head of, treasurer for Greece, whatever they call that position. And remember, were having all that trouble with the Greek bonds. They couldn't really trade them, and it was a mess. And so he said something to the president, and the president answered in about 2 minutes. And it was kind of, well, Eddie, how about this? First of all, let me get your card, and I'll give you a call tomorrow. But what if we did this and this and this? With overlooking the major pitfalls that everybody else could see in the difficulty that Greece was having to deal with. But the point of all this is we need to continue with the election process so that we get people who are really looking to the future and are willing to sit down and get this them and us. I guess that's that part of this behind us. The port, I think, is an excellent driver. Jim was a president of the Harbor Commission for a while, and it laid a good foundation, as did many others. It's, that is a money machine. They paid, $450 million to buy out the oil wells, and then they make $1 gazillion after having done that from the revenues from the port. So I think that will become, if it's not already, gigantically self-sufficient, and will help Long Beach altogether. I think a lot of our elected officials can address the kind of problems that you accurately point out exist, and can work to get them solved. Got a lot of nice people there who are smart people and who care about the end game as you and I do. So there are no easy answers to any of these things, but I guess the theme of what I'm saying is we just have to keep working on this till we get it right, and someday, most of it, we will.
Great. We have a question from the online audience. You have been to many places. What kept you in Long Beach? What about our community do you like the most?
Well, I just love Long Beach. I love the beach here. I was here when they had the barracks things, you know. It wasn't the highlight of my life, but it was neat. And if you ever wanted to, I have been a lot of places, and if you ever wanted to be in a place where everybody, not everybody, but essentially everybody was genuinely delightful. I mean, look at this group. I know probably half of you on a first name basis, but the other ones I don't. When you talk, you're smiling and you're nodding and being ladies and gentlemen. That's kind of the undertone of this, not kind of, it's the undertone of this university, which we all care about, and it's the undertone of the city. And I was here when the sailors were getting thrown out of bars and that kind of stuff. That wasn't me, Your Honor. I was just, okay, I'll tell you a story. Okay. So I'm driving down, you know where the tattoo shop is on Chestnut? It's the oldest tattoo shop in the world. So I was driving down the alley, which is now the one side of that store, and we pull up behind a police car, and the police are arresting 3 guys who have just beat the you-know-what out of this old chief. The chief's, like a sergeant, and it was, whatever happened, it was not good for the chief, and these cops were really mad. And this one guy, big tall guy, and he's got black gloves on, and he's got them with their hands up on the wall, and one of them leans over to the other and is whispering, and the cop just goes wham and knocks their heads together. I mean, I don't know that they fell down, but we've come a long way from where that was necessary. It still happens, and it's unfortunate, but this is just a nice place. And then you say, well, what do you do in a nice place? What do you try to do to make it nice for others? Well, you got a facility like we do. We let people use it, normally at no expense, and so that they can in turn bring people together, have a foundation for helping people with all the issues from dread diseases to housing and so on. It's just, this is easy stuff if we all work together on it.
Skip, anybody that's been up to your offices and wandered around for a few minutes knows that you've come in contact with some of the world's most dynamic people. Thinking back on that, name 1 or 2 that really stand out in your mind that are, in your opinion, some of the most dynamic people that you've ever had the pleasure of meeting in your life.
Thank you for that question. President Clinton, far and away, because of, not that anybody doesn't have the same views as him or isn't as charming as him, but he's the whole package. And he really cares about people. And at a time when all he has to do is sit back and play golf, he's out there, doing everything he can to make this nice. And when you meet him, he's your best friend. And everybody says that. And so he would be the first. And I would say the old President Bush was right up there with him. He came, and we have a thing for the Boys and Girls Clubs, and thanks to Nancy being in charge of that, and all the good things that come from it. We've had like 23. Oh, thank you, but no, it's you, babe. We've had, I think, 23. We've had several presidents, and as you suggest, several prime ministers, and all this stuff. And they're all fast. Condoleezza Rice, I think, is an absolute champion. Nancy, who would you add onto that list? John Glenn, certainly a wonderful guy. Tony Blair. Oh, Margaret Thatcher. Yeah. Yeah. Margaret Thatcher came in. Okay, so we bought this building, and it turned out to be a wonderful investment. That's not the point. But we had to fix it up to have her come there. And so my view of the world is, even though my name might be the highest one on the letterhead, I get treated last. So my office had a desk in it with a tarpaulin over the desk and chairs with plastic over them. And it was cement floor at, pick a number, 10 o'clock at night. And she's going to be there at, 10 o'clock the next morning. Not exactly the best planning, but that's what we had to deal with. And she came in the next morning, and she was absolutely delightful. She was fun, and she, tell you a quick story, okay? So we have an open bar for any events. I mean, if there's a religious reason not to do it, then we obviously don't. But so people are drinking champagne and orange juice and so on. And we sit down at kind of a table at the front underneath the microphone. And Betty Eastman, who's also very helpful in doing this, she gets up just after Margaret Thatcher has ordered a Scotch neat. All right, so they bring her a glass, and it's about this full. And she kind of lights up. This is at 11:30 by this time, 12 o'clock maybe. And then Betty Eastman hasn't read the run of the house, because we're supposed to have lunch first, and then Betty introduces her. So Betty gets up to introduce her and just starts talking. And Margaret Thatcher she's sitting there and she looks at the drink and she goes, if you can't see my face, it's, ooh, I'm not going to get a chance to drink this, which I thought was a good indication she was my kind of woman. She was, yeah. That was wonderful.
Okay, I think we have time for 2 more questions. I'll give one to the audience and one to online. So.
Hi, Skip.
How you doing?
As the volleyball coach here, I like the fact that you're putting some volleyball comments in there.
And I got your nice note. I got your nice note too. Thank you.
But let me say this, and on the pattern here of speaking about your wonderful 14th floor, for everyone here, we've been lucky enough to host many events, not only for the athletic department, but especially for the men's volleyball team. At your event with your Bob Stemler and Richard were fabulous. And I can honestly say there's no way that we had the success, the championship years, and the sending players to the Olympics and all that without the support over the years of what you guys did for us. So that's the comment. So thank you. You've been wonderful for my program. The question, and this will be a short one for you.
Thank you for that.
If you're volleyball, do you have any eligibility left for my team?
I did great in at SC Law School. I had this best friend who was a world-class volleyball player. He was about 5'7", and this guy could scoop anything. He could hit from the back line. He did those jump serves. This is the 58, 59, 60. No, I'm sorry, 62, 63, 64. And he said, wham! So we decided we're going to get together a team. So I can dig them as you suggested in your note, but short guys can't jump, and I can't jump. And anyway, we're doing just great, and we're up against these 2 fellas. I think they were Scandinavian, and I say that only because they were really handsome, and they were about a foot taller than either of us. And somebody, I guess he served it. I must have been, and it just came. And you know these ones when they really get a hold of it, it goes like this. And I didn't know whether to go down or go up or what, and it went off my thumb, that was the end of my volleyball career. Yeah. You're welcome, and thank you. Thank you for your nice comments.
And our last one is, how did CSULB give you the boost you needed to launch yourself, both personally and professionally?
Well, I was in a fraternity here with some of these bandits that are sitting around here, and we had a good time together, but I think all of us thought that we were really had, won a prize, because we got together with guys like George and Sam and, anyway, everybody here, Jim, and you could, if you listened and you watched, you could see what guys, what their strong points were. And if you really concentrated on it, you could emulate those. I'm not talking about being a sycophant, but I'm just saying, this guy who does this and that's really nice. And so that, with that background on a social level, and then the professors here were all just great. I went here for 3.5, 4 years if you count the master's work. And, everybody was there to make it better for you. My business law professor was a guy named Rhodes. He was a lawyer. He smoked like a really good guy, remember? and so I walk across the campus to go. He's going back to his office, and I said, Professor Rhodes, I'm going to go to law school. What do you think my major should be? And he said, nothing, I repeat, nothing, I repeat again, nothing will help you in law school. So you decide what you want to do with your law degree, and to the extent that it involves something that you can do here, then make that your major. So I thought, well, business sounded like a good idea to me, and here we are all these years later. Let me say in conclusion here, thank you. I'm flattered to be here. You're all such nice people, and if you talk like this, and I think most of us have done these kind of things before, that what you really want is somebody who looks like they're interested, who's got a smile on their face, and all of you have that. So thanks to you, Dan. Thanks for everyone here at the Alumni Center. It's a pleasure and a privilege.
Yes. Skip, thank you so much. We really appreciate having you. We're going to dismiss the folks that are online, and thank you for joining us. Please know that this isn't the last fireside chat we'll be doing, so stay tuned for that. And I encourage the rest of you to mingle and ask Skip a lot more questions that maybe you didn't want to ask. And so enjoy some time with him. But thank you again, Skip, and your wife, beautiful wife, for joining us. So thank you so much. And again, one more round of applause.